So the Packers game just ended a few minutes ago, and I was sitting there. My palms were getting a little sweaty. I was feeling nervous, waiting for McManus to go out there and kick a field goal where he hadn't kicked a real field goal besides an extra point all day long. He goes out there, gets iced, makes the first one. I'm getting even more nervous sitting there thinking about, that's a high-pressure situation for McManus to be in. The kick comes out, the snap comes, he kicks it looks like it's going left, and I'm like, oh no, please no, please no. It sort of stays back in line, goes in, and the Packers win a game. The kicker is the main reason why. We finally have the missing piece in Green Bay. McManus is the missing piece in Green Bay. We've dealt with so many problems with kicker the past couple of years, and it's been a issue that has brought lots of pain to us Packers fans. And I was hoping that, he didn't miss that first one. And the fact that he made it, I'm just hyped right now. I'm so pumped that we actually have someone who can make a kick in a crucial big-time situation. And I'm just relieved right now because if I was sitting here talking to you guys and he had missed the field goal and we're like, what the heck is the problem? We went from Anders to Narveson to now McManus and we lose and now we're 4-3 instead of 5-2. That was one of, that's going to go down as one of the best Packers plays this season to put the Packers at 5-2, beating the Houston Texans. Thank goodness the Packers actually made the decision to move on from Narveson. I hope he has a great career. He seemed like an awesome guy. Things are working out for him. They bring in McManus this week. And as it was setting up there near the end, when the Texans make that field goal, I'm thinking, wow, McManus is about to have to come in and probably kick a field goal to try to win the game. And if you're McManus, you haven't played in a long time. He kicked a few extra points, but those are, expected to be made, which he did make those early in the game. But for him to be in a high-pressure situation, your first kick, real-life kick, not an extra point as a Packer, that's some of the biggest pressure I think that you could probably be under as a kicker. And so to see him make that, not only am I just ecstatic right now. I'm pumped right now. The Packers won that game with that field goal. We're touching the whole thing here in a second. But for the future, this just gives me hope because I think all of us have talked about where the Packers, it's like, okay, we know that the offense can play really well. The defense looks pretty awesome too, for the most part. But the biggest weakness has been kicker. And it's like, that in the NFL, you're going to have a ton of very close games. We had that play in the 49ers playoff game last year where if Anders makes that field goal, that really would have shifted things, and the Packers could have potentially won that game if Anders makes that field goal. And so we know that come later in the season, different games this season, come playoff time, there are going to be times where you need a kicker who can come in a high-pressure situation and not allow it mentally to get with him, get at him, and you need a guy who can be calm and cool under pressure and come in and make a kick. And McManus seems to be that guy. So I applaud the Packers for deciding to move on from Narveson as early as they did, only, 5-6 games in, to bring in McManus, who is a veteran, experienced kicker. He has experience in the playoffs. He's played in a Super Bowl. And so I think that's the value of having a guy who has basically, a little over 10 years, basically 10 years in the NFL, is you have a guy who has been in a lot of high-pressure situations. And I think we saw, what he can be for this Packers team. And, we desperately needed it. And so he's the reason at the end here the Packers actually win this one. So thank goodness the Packers seem to have solved their kicker situation. This doesn't mean he's going to be perfect going forward, but this is what you would want to see because, there's not going to be many bigger pressure moments than this. Just when you haven't played in so long, your first kick as a Packer besides extra point. This is a high-pressure situation. And to see what he did in that moment after getting iced, because you would think, you make a field goal first. Tony Romo brought up, after you make it, part of you's thinking to yourself, I just got a nice kickoff. I sort of could see where it went. But at the same time, it's like you're probably thinking to yourself, I hope I don't miss the next one because I made the first one. That would stink. And luckily he made it. So here we are. Oh, it's just a great day for the Packers. I'm sitting here relieved. I was stressed out before that kick went up. That feeling where you're just nervous, hoping the kick goes in, and thank goodness, because it would be a much different video right now if he had missed that kick. So that's what we had to touch on. That deserved, 4 or 5 minutes there to start this video. Now to the rest of the game, which there is some good things, some bad things. Jordan Love, once again, he's just starting to look more and more like Brett Favre, where he's throwing a ton of touchdown passes, but also throwing a ton of interceptions. He throws a interception on the first drive. The Texans get the ball at the 11. Luckily, the defense came up big and held them to a field goal after that one. So, the defense played great today. We'll start off with the offense. And with Jordan Love, last week, it was his third game back from the MCL sprain. And it really felt like he had really gotten things figured out. He had one interception, but it wasn't his fault. Bo Melton slipped. He threw the pick. And that was after, the Vikings game, he throws 3 interceptions. The game after that, the Rams game, he throws the pick 6. And then you have this one where on the first drive, he just throws a bad ball. And then a little later in that first half as well, there was another interception that was obviously his fault. And so it seems that, as time goes on, we're going to see more and more overall, like, who is Jordan Love as a quarterback? And we had that stretch late last year where it felt like he could sort of be like Aaron Rodgers, where he barely puts the ball in harm's way. 18 touchdowns to 1 interception in the final 8 or 9 games last season. But so far this year, it's starting to look like that may not be, the kind of game Jordan Love plays. And even on that last drive, the first ball was nearly intercepted. And if the Texans guy would have actually caught it at the end there after it was tipped, we'd be having a very interesting conversation right now about Jordan Love just being pretty loose with the ball. And luckily, it wasn't picked off. He led the Packers down the field, so we also have to give Jordan Love a ton of credit for going down there, making a big game-winning drive to put the Packers into field goal range. McManus wouldn't have had the opportunity if the Packers and Romeo Doubs, Jordan Love wouldn't have made those plays to get down into that position, into field goal range. And one thing from this game, Jordan Love and Romeo Doubs' connection is next level, especially in these big moments. Looking at the final series here, I'm just trying to look here to see who all caught the ball. You have a pass to Romeo Doubs, another one to Tucker Kraft, another one to Wicks. Then you have another one to Doubs for 12. And I think the one to get into field goal range where Doubs almost fumbled it, but he was down first. Another one to Doubs. So we see that connection. It's great to have him back here, not suspended. And Jordan Love led the Packers to a game-winning drive field goal. So that's just a kind of win you want to see, where you're going to have games where you're going to be in a high-pressure situation like Jordan Love was last year in the 49ers game. And unfortunately last year, he tried to do a little too much, throws the interception to end the game, and it almost happened on the first play. So luckily it didn't happen. But now we're starting to see that Jordan Love, I do think he's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. They were showing stats throughout the game where, like, the past 2 seasons, he leads the NFL in touchdowns, and now I think he probably leads the league in interceptions. If you look at his overall interceptions, because he threw 3 touchdowns to 2 interceptions this game. And so I'm starting to wonder if this is just who Jordan Love is, where he is sort of a high-risk, high-reward thrower, where lots of times it works out in a big way and it looks awesome. And then you have some other plays where, because he is willing to put the ball into super tight windows, sometimes he puts it in a place where it's just a bad ball overall. So the Packers still find ways to win with Jordan Love throwing these interceptions. And when you look at the turnover margin in this game, the Packers were -3 in turnover margin and still won 24-22. So that's a pretty wild stat, because typically teams who win the turnover margin win the game. That's why the Packers are so focused on trying to force turnovers. Today, the Packers defense didn't force a turnover, but they were able to, just after the first half, I tweeted something out there where the Packers were only down 5 and they were -3 in turnover margin. And that's pretty shocking. I think it shows you, even at the overall score, 24-22, -3 in turnover margin, how good this defense played for a majority of the day. They shut down C.J. Stroud, who I think is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. 10 for 21, 86 yards. To hold a quarterback for under 100 yards passing is pretty insane. That doesn't happen very often, I feel like. He had a 58.8 passer rating. The leading receiver in yards was Dalton Schultz. 1 reception, 28 yards. Stephon Diggs, 5 receptions, 23 yards. So we got to give massive props to the Packers secondary. They blanketed the receivers, shut them down. Evan Williams looks like he may be one of the best Packers players on this defense. He's insane when it comes to tackling. The Packers shut them down. A lot of it had to do with the pass rush, which we have to give a ton of credit today to what the pass rush did. It was one of the best days for the Packers pass rush this entire season. And coming into it, the Texans' offensive line has been one of their biggest weaknesses. Coming into it, they were 25th in pressure percentage allowed. They've allowed the 6th most sacks. And in this game, the Packers were able to get 4 total sacks in this one, which is great to see, because I think for lots of times this season, the Packers' pass rush has been pretty average. And Rashawn Gary, a lot of the season, hadn't really been showing up too much in games. This game, I think he was probably one of his better ones of the entire season. And then Eric Wilson had a great game. He had 2 sacks overall, had a few other great plays, big hits, pass breakups. He started playing a ton more because Quay Walker went down with that head injury earlier in the game. So a big shout out to Wilson for doing what he did. Evan Williams led the team in tackles, but it was good to see the Packers pass rush really affecting CJ Stroud. I think that's one of the reasons that he struggled passing was because he was running for his life a majority of the day. I still need to find the stats of, what percentage of snaps he was pressured on. At one point in the second half, it was over like 50% or around 50%. And a lot of it, too, had to do with the types of pressures Hafley was sending. He sent Xavier McKinney on a blitz early in the game, did a lot of different stunts, where guys sort of go the opposite way. And so it was a great showing by the defense where they had two terrible starts in field position because Jordan Love's first interception, the Texans started the 11, hold them to a field goal. Great start there. And then the punt fumble, which the special teams, outside of McManus today, the rest of the special teams was bad. You have Valentine hits his foot on that one punt. The Texans get the ball at the 11 once again, and I believe they scored off of that one. And so the Packers defense, the one area where they were weak was against the run. That's pretty much all the Texans could do today was run the ball. Joe Mixon dominated 25 carries, 115 yards, 4.6 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. Joe Mixon is the only reason the Texans were in this game because the Packers run D, overall they allowed 4.3 yards a carry, 142 yards. There were, a ton of holes. Mixon looks pretty much the best he's ever looked. I feel like he looks better than he even looked lots of time when he was with the Bengals for a majority of his career. And so that's one area where the Packers had been pretty good overall, like close to 10th to 12th in rush yards allowed this season. But in this one, they shut the pass down, and I feel like you can sleep well if you're Jeff Hafley, knowing that you held CJ Stroud 10 to 21, 86 yards. The type of passer CJ Stroud is, that's just a great performance. A lot of it has to do with the pass rush. And I really liked seeing the physicality, the intensity that these guys like Jair were playing with, Keyshawn Nixon. There was some fight before the game. It looked like Stephon Diggs, Jair, Keyshawn Nixon. There was a ton of stuff going on. You could tell it was a little bit chippy during this game. But I like seeing the intensity from the defense, and they were able to hold them to a field goal the final drive. CJ Stroud almost had them, got them in position to win that game. The final drive, I think it was 3rd and 9. He throws that one ball. They get the first down, and it's like, oh no, hopefully they don't get one more first down. Because if they would have gotten one more first down, they could have run the clock down pretty much to the end. And so great overall performance for the defense. And to win a game when you lose a turnover margin by 3 is pretty crazy. And so going forward, the Packers are 5-2. They're playing some great football. There's a lot to clean up from Jordan Love. The offense can clean some things up as well. But the Packers, this is a massive win for the Packers. And going forward, I just feel great that we have a kicker who we can rely on. That's been something the past couple of years has been worrisome until this point. And that's, the biggest takeaway here is just how good McManus was in the final moment when we needed it most. But if you guys want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe down below. And you can follow me on Twitter at LukeBeller3. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.